We had a first look at binding attributes in the last video using the key. We're now going to move on to looking at binding class and style attributes too. To do this, we can create a dark mode for our blog, which the user can toggle on or off. So to create the styles for this dark mode, we need to go over to our style sheet, and then down at the bottom, we can add a dark mode class, which we're going to toggle on or off. So this is going to be pretty simple. We can create the background and set this to a darker color. The one I'm going to use is going to be 38383A. To offset this, we'll change the color to be a lighter value of white smoke. To apply this dark mode, we are going to add this as a class, and surrounding all of our content, such as the header section and our blog, we have this surrounding div element. So in the opening tag, just inside the body, we can add this as a regular class, and this will apply our changes. This works fine, but we need a way to toggle this on and off, and also to integrate this into our Vue app. Currently we have a small problem, which is we're using Vue to control the header section and also the blog section independently. But when we toggle on the dark mode, we want this class to be applied to the full site. So we can simplify things by merging our two Vue instances. To do this, all we need to do is to grab our posts from the second app and then paste this into the data property for our first section. We don't have any more data inside here, so we can remove this full instance. And then we're going to mount this to the body section. This means that the Vue instance is now controlling all of our web page. The first step to allow this class to be toggled on and off is to set this as a data property. The data property is going to be a boolean, and I'm going to call this the dark mode set, which will be an initial boolean value of false. To dynamically toggle the dark mode class based on this particular data property, we need to pass our class attribute as an object. So rather than a regular attribute just like this, inside of here we need to add an object using the curly braces. And we only want this dark class to apply if the data property, which is dark mode set, is going to be equal to true. So currently this is false, so Vue.js won't apply this dark class. We can see this if we refresh the browser, the dark class no longer applies. But if we were to toggle this to be true, Vue.js should then apply our class. But if we refresh this, we don't see any changes, and this is because just like when we set the key property earlier on, we need to bind this as a dynamic value. Currently, Vue.js is reading this as a string, which we can see if we go into the developer tools. So right click and inspect, we have the body section, and then immediately inside, we see that our class is output as a string. This is not a valid class, so instead what we're going to do is to use the Bind Directive, or just like earlier, we can shorten this to be a colon. Now instead of a string, this will be interpreted as JavaScript, and if we refresh the developer tools, we see the class of dark has now been applied, and this has also been applied to our project too. Alongside this class, we can also add data properties to inline styles too. So let's remove this, and we're going to set up a regular style property, which is just regular HTML. Inside of here, we can set the color value. Let's go for a value of hot pink. This is just regular HTML, so if we refresh, this will then be applied to our project. We can also move this color property to be a data property too. Inside of the script, let's set the text color to be the string value of hot pink. Then, as we did with the class attribute, we need to pass this style in as an object. So the first step is to surround this in the curly braces, and then replace this string of hot pink with our data property, which was text color. This is a variable, so we need to bind this using vbind, or the shorthand, which was a colon. Refresh, and this time our styling has been applied from the data property. If we did have multiple style properties which we wanted to add like this, our HTML could quickly get messy. So instead we could remove this, leaving in the style attribute, and then over in our script we can create a style object as a data property. We can remove this, And then instead, we're going to set up our dark mode CSS using the same styles that we applied down at the bottom. So let's comment this out. And then set up our background, which was the hex value of 38, 38, 3A. And also the color for the text, which is going to be white smoke. This dark mode object can now be directly placed as an attribute. Since this value is already an object, we don't need to place in the curly braces. This can just get directly added in. Let's give this a try. And our dark mode has now been applied. We can even add multiple style objects too. For example, if we wanted to set up a base font family or some base styles, we could set up a new object, and let's set the font family to be the value of monospace. If you were not familiar adding CSS properties with JavaScript, all of these CSS properties need to be camel case. If we were using CSS directly in our style sheet, we would set the font family all in lowercase and separated with the dashes. Instead, in JavaScript, we set this as camel case, so each word after the very first one begins with a capital letter. Now we have these multiple style objects which we want to add. These can be now placed in as an array. So we can pass in these square brackets, and then our second object, which was base. Save this. And the styling for both of our objects have been merged. If we go into the developer tools, we can see this by hovering over our main div. This has our background color, it has the text color, and then our font family from the second JavaScript object.